video to come on. Here we go. Okay, this is Monday, November 16th, 2020, 9 a.m. This is the Muscatine County Board of Supervisors. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is to review the agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion by Nathan.
Second.
I have a second by Scott. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item number 3 is discussion of possible action to approve claims dated November 16th, 2020 in the amount of $1,463,829.76. I have a motion by Scott. I have a second by Doug. Oh, I haven't heard. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Santos, do we have you out there on the phone?
I'm on
Was that you, Santos? Bill, you got it figured out?
He's there, but I'm not.
Yeah, can you hear me?
There you go. Okay, yeah. All right, now we heard you, Santos. No, we were not picking you up. Okay, so Santos is attending.
about that.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, did I call all in favor, aye? Yeah. Okay, so we got an aye with Santos as well. Thank you, Santos. Item number 4 is discussion of possible action to approve change order number 5 for the Muscatine County Sheriff's Office Addition Project in the amount of $486.91 with Mike Nolan of Horizon Architecture. Mike, are you with us this morning?
I am. Good morning. Everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Let me just talk through this real quick because I appreciate this is probably not the most straightforward change order. So if you recall, with change order 3, we had approved to add additional concrete base and an in-ground light to light the flagpole. Essentially, in the communication with that change order between the electrical subcontractor and general contractor, that ended up being probably about $2,000 shy of what they actually need to get the work done. So the general contractor contacted me, and we spoke over this also with their furnace. It's going to actually be about $3,500 to do the in-ground lights and the additional flagpole base. At that point, we decided that probably was not the best approach. So we looked at a couple of different options, and we kind of arrived at what you see here, which was to do a building-mounted spotlight for the flag. And that's there's an outlet that we had installed for $383.47 you're seeing on this. The light fixture for the flagpole, at this point, we asked the electrical contractor to give us a price for that, and we sent the specification along for that light. It's basically a high-powered LED directional light that would be able to aim from the building. If you have the electrical contractor install that, that would be $830.46. The final piece of this, which was my impression, was the whole reason we started talking about this, was that when we relocated the light pole, MPW said that they would reinstall the pole. We had to provide the conduit. Unfortunately, that got lost in the mix in the last conversation as well. So now we're getting that caught up. $870.85 to install the conduit, basically from the meter base to the new light location. So this essentially catches up all of that stuff, which unfortunately just got caught in the cross hairs in the last conversation. So I would say of this, what we're proposing is the contractor credit us back what was originally given for the change order, $1,534.87. And the difference, if we choose to have the electrician install the light, would be an additional $486.91. In addition to the $1,500 previously approved. So the total for all of this work for the light and the conduit would be around $2,000.
Okay. So in a nutshell, Mike, the way we had originally envisioned this, we're looking at we'd have to do another 2,000, so we'd be about $4,000 total. This is a rework of that concept to get all the work done for about $2,000.
That's correct. Essentially, that's what we came down to. We didn't feel like the value was there. We probably would not have recommended it had we known it was going to be $3,500 total for a single in ground. This is the direction we probably would have gone to begin with. So we apologize for any confusion on that.
there any questions on that? If
I'll make a
not,
motion to approve.
so I have a motion by Santos. Second by Doug. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Santos?
Aye, sorry, I was muted.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Mike. Item number 5 on the agenda this morning is discussion of possible action to approve an ordinance allowing the use of all-terrain and off-road utility vehicles on portion of county roads on the second of 3 readings. I'll start this out by saying that we had a note from the county attorney on this just this past week, and there were some confusion and clarification possibly that we should consider around restraints. I don't know if I followed all of it, Jim. Maybe you could give us just a brief of your recommendation. And I think we're at a point, Nancy, not that we could actually incorporate those changes into the readings, could we not, or would we go back through the reading process?
You could do either. You could incorporate those into the ordinance that you're approving today, or we could back up and start the process over if you think the changes are substantive enough.
Jim, you wanna just kind of
Sure.
do a quick?
I apologize for this coming up at this stage of the process. However, the issue was raised at the last conference I was at relative to golf carts and whether or not a child who would otherwise be required to be restrained would have to be restrained in a golf cart. And a law enforcement agency or agency somewhere had raised that issue. Long story short, as it related to a golf cart, because they weren't subject to registration, the child restraint device was not authorized to, you couldn't file charges against them for it. And so it made me think about this, because we did do a pretty diligent search and, had a pretty in-depth meeting relative to safety. And I'm not necessarily proposing that it be added. It just was something that we had not heretofore discussed. So I went through the code last week. I sent an email out and I listed all the code sections that I looked at. Unlike golf carts, ATVs and UTVs are registered and have to be insured. And so what I wanted to do was make sure that we at least had the discussion at this stage. We do require the use of safety belts when they're on the unit already. That's part of the ordinance that we've already had a reading on. But the child restraint devices were not. And I also raised this issue with the AG's office because I'm not sure he was aware that this many counties have passed them in Iowa, and there's not been a whole lot of training out there on what to do. And so the net is that I think, because they are subject to registration and insurance, that a child restraint device, and that would be primarily in the quad tracks, would be appropriate if that's what the board wants to do. If the board didn't want to do that, I think that's fine as well, but I'm not going to say that would necessarily prohibit somebody from being written a ticket if that's what if something happened. So it's a bit of a outlier, but at the same time, I think given the discussion we had and the concerns about safety, that we at least address it however you determine you want to do that.
I have a question. Child safety device, are we talking car seat application?
Yes.
Okay.
So if they're under 1, you gotta have the rear facing
No, I get it.
one,
I
and
get
so
it.
it's, otherwise, the pictures they were showing was obviously people driving around in golf carts hanging on to infants.
Yeah.
And that's really, what raised the issue with law enforcement saying, hey, this just simply isn't safe. And so I didn't feel like, since we hadn't discussed it, that we should ignore it, and at least the board should consider it, do as you please.
Well, that's a point that I never even considered.
Yeah, and I guess my opinion would be that, if we're allowing them to operate on a road, they need to be road legal. And if road legal, part of the original, is with safety harnesses, then I would give no exemption to not having child restraint. I mean, that's, and so that maybe a good step forward might be that we, not necessarily, we don't wanna rewrite the code, and I don't think that'd be your intention, but would make sure that they understand that including child restraints.
Yeah, I would simply add to that section on seatbelts that, that includes child restraint devices as required by law. And that would be the sum total of any adjustment to the proposed ordinance, to keep it simple and sweet and not make it complicated. As you can imagine, there are a variety of ordinances around the state. And I think this board took the appropriate approach, which is let's look at this thing in an all-encompassing way, try to be as safe as possible and do these things because we all know that eventually there's gonna be an accident and a hue and cry. It's not that anybody does anything wrong, it just happens. And so these child restraint devices are probably part of that conversation.
Yeah. So I mean, I can certainly see a young family with a real young, child, want to go for a ride on a nice day, and, makes perfect sense to me.
Well, and of course the conflict comes in because, Muscatine doesn't allow them. Fruitland does, but I don't know that Fruitland's ordinance requires child restraint devices. And so, see, you get into that, once they leave the jurisdiction, that they're in, you have a possibility of creating a requirement that isn't being followed by somebody else. And, then that gets people, crossways and confused.
Well, I think we have to do what is common sense and what makes sense.
Okay? If you want me to
That's my opinion.
propose some, language, to Nancy, I can do that today.
Yeah,
And,
I think I would, and then Nancy, maybe it would be best is if we just, look to table this reading, and then we have that proposed language added, and then we put on next week for the second reading again with the addition of the proposed language, and that way we'll have one more reading where if public wants to comment on that proposed language, they'd be able to.
That makes perfect sense to me that we would do that.
Thank you.
Okay, so do I have a motion to table this?
So moved.
I have a motion to table by Nathan,
Second.
and a second by Scott. Would we need a roll call on that table, Nancy? Because the resolution was a roll call.
I would go ahead and do it by roll call.
Okay, we're gonna do this as a roll call vote. Nathan?
Aye.
Scott? Doug? Santos?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So the motion is tabled. Thank you, Jim. We appreciate your,
That was a very good catch on your behalf. Appreciate it.
One of the benefits of going somewhere and being educated, a little bit anyway, makes you think of things that you don't always think about.
yeah, very good. Okay, item number 6 is Vision 2020 update with CEO Cheryl Plank and Vision 2020 board member John Becky. Cheryl and John, are you with us this morning out there in Zoom land or go-to land? Do you see
I
me?
am here, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Cheryl.
Great, and I believe John, yep,
Is that you, John?
morning,
Good morning, John.
yeah.
Okay, you have the
All
floor.
right, well, okay, so you should have a copy of my annual report and a PowerPoint, and I'll be following the PowerPoint, which you can, the information is also in the annual report. But first of all, thank you for allowing us to present here today. I know John and I came several months ago prior to COVID and talked a little bit about 2020. I've now been here a year, so have a little more to share. Some will be just a repeat of what you've heard before, but the reason the 2020 group got together, it was several community-minded individuals. They wanted to get together, they wanted to do what they could to help human services be sustainable in our community. And the main changes that they were looking that were happening are the Olmstead Act, the federal state law changes, Affordable Care Act, mental health regulations, Medicaid transition to MTOs, and the funding. And I think now we could even add the COVID pandemic would play a part in that as well. There were ongoing challenges. Public funding was becoming strained or stagnant. Demands and competition for private funds was increasing. Private sector workplace skill requirements were rapidly changing, and cost to provide required competent staff is difficult to afford for smaller organizations. So these four organizations came together, Crossroads, MCSA, Muscatine Welfare Association, and Senior Resources, to see a pathway forward for providers of seniors, disabled, and displaced individuals. The concept of Vision 2020 is simple. If we put the right organization structure in place now, focused on leverage, efficiency, and effectiveness, Vision 2020 can lead to a sustainable future. In the beginning, brainstorming meetings were held to discuss the challenges and experiences by small nonprofit agencies. As I said, these included MTSA, Senior Resources, Crossroads, and MWA, and it also included community leaders, the local government, funders, and United Way. A letter of intent was then signed by three of the providers, and which Senior Resources, Crossroads, MTSA, and then later MWA also signed an agreement to move forward with the vision of 2020. The current state, when I came, existed of each of the four organizations, and each four organizations had their board of directors. They then developed the Vision 2020 board as well. As they were moving forward, several accomplishments were made prior to my joining. The board was formed, and that consisted of 2 members of board members of each of the 4 nonprofits, as well as 3 founding voting members, and the directors of the 3 nonprofits also were attending, but they were non-voting members. They adopted mission and vision, and then they started a committee to find leadership, and that's when they hired me. The vision of 2020 serves as a catalyst to bring human services together to assure mission-driven and sustainability. The mission of Vision 2020 is to provide leadership and resources to assure that human service organizations in the Muscatine area meet the needs. The concept of Vision 2020 is simple. If we put the right organization structure in place now, focused on leverage, efficiency, effectiveness, Vision 2020 will support a sustainable future. As I said, I started just a year ago on November 11th, and during the first 3 months, I spent most of that time meeting board members, having some one-on-one discussions, meeting with leadership in the community, as well as attending the county board of supervisors and city council meetings. During that time, I began to develop a timeline of how to get to the vision that was asked of me to do. That timeline, of course, remains fluid, and thank goodness it's fluid because COVID had made some changes there. As you can see, you'll see in your PowerPoint the future state. This is what I was being charged to do to get it to this point. And this would include eventually having just one board of directors with a management team and all operating as one entity. So the progress continues. As I said, March hit and the pandemic began, and our world as we knew it did begin to change extremely. With that, we forged on with some things happening faster and others taking a little bit slower. During this time, the interim executive directors of Senior Resources and Crossroads departed. Many of you know Joni Axel and Jim Hayes. And I was named the CEO of Senior Resources, Crossroads, and MWA, and I continue to be the consultant to MCSA. Also during this time, I hired a deputy director, Megan Francis, and she helps oversee the Senior Resources and MWA project. We developed, we made changes to the Vision 2020 bylaws. We began discussion of partnering opportunities, and a new transitional structure was created. And you can see that in the next slide, and that is where it's showing me directly reporting to each of those boards, except for MCSA, where I continue to be the consultant in there. So as I said, relationships and partnerships were beginning to develop. As trust grows and they see changes making, more will continue to happen among the partnering agencies. As of this time, all the agencies are now able to provide a 401k plan, and that was not available to the smaller organizations prior to that. But thanks to the relationship Crossroads has with the Iowa Association of Community Providers, we were able to do that. A letter of agreement was made for MCSA to take on the maintenance of all the organizations. And because of that, a wonderful project was completed at Senior Resources in a bathroom that was done for less than $1,500 thanks to the maintenance individuals that both organizations had to have been contracted out, so you can imagine what that would have cost. Now one of the Senior Resources staff is helping MCSA do some data entry and assisting with some finance in the finance area. MCSA and Crossroads are developing an integrated community employment project where individuals from MCSA in their housing program are coming to work and develop skills at Crossroads. The director of services at Crossroads is now working with the Senior Resources Adult Day Center, and she will eventually supervise that program. And now a letter of engagement and letter of intent were signed in September to complete a full merge of Crossroads and Senior Resources. That merge is expected to take place by January 1, with both agencies maintaining their identities. So we will continue to have the names, the Senior Resources programs and the Crossroads program, but they will all be under the same state ID. So with that, and the anticipated structure to begin January 2021, you will see in that slide where Crossroads and Senior Resources will have one board, and we will still have MCSA and NWAS with their separate boards. So the next steps we want to begin to build a structure that supports the larger vision, 2020 partner agencies. Most significant of the next steps will be to hire a CFO to serve as a strategic business partner for all the partners. So as you can imagine, the possibilities are endless. Sustainability of service delivery of needed programs and services, efficiency and optimum use of financial and human resource talent, strengthen recruitment, development, and compensation of skilled leaders and employees, effective use and recruitment of strong board members possessing needed skills and passion, improving revenue opportunities, strengthening of donor base and commitment driven by most effective use of donor funding, and bringing services together for the most effective delivery of those in need. So with Vision 2020 and these partnering organizations, by providing training and care, education, respite support, and many other opportunities, we believe together we can change the lives to improve confidence, self-reliance, attitudes, financial stability, housing, productivity, and so on, making the community better for everyone. However, continued funding is needed to help support this strategic initiative and implementation to get to the future state. As I said, the critical next step is the recruitment for a CFO covering the cost for the first 3 years. So the future state, again, as everything I do is to get us to this point where we just have one board, one management company, and all working together under one board of directors, as I said. With that future state, this next slide, what it actually shows putting everything into separate buckets where you have finance for all the organization, sales and marketing, all for all the organizations, operations, so on, housing and services, all fitting under one bucket. So with the private-public partnerships, our goal has been to reach $750,000 over 3 years. Each of the 4 entities committed to $20,000 a year. That left $460,000 needed for the public and private partnership. As of October 2020, we have secured $272,500. So the remainder is still needed of $187,500. So the prospects and opportunities to find efficiencies, provide quality service, to hire the best talent, and to ensure sustainability are immense when working with such great teams among the partnership. Any questions?
Hi Cheryl, this is Jeff. So a couple of questions. So the net is 188,000 over 3 years is what the funding gap is right now?
Correct.
Okay, and then we want to talk about the vision on long-term sustainability. So as I understood or understand this a little bit from the presentation, that each of these individual entities would have had all of these resources and services. Plus, I know in my experience on some of those boards, some of our workers were paid very poorly, had very minimal benefits just because of the stretch of the dollars there. So I like that, being able to expand some benefits. But can you tell me about the long-term, how are we gonna sustain these funds long-term? So if we do this, if there's 187, let's say we get this 700 total, where does that money come from long-term?
So for example, by combining, right now by moving forward with the combination of Crossroads and Senior Resources, right there we start reducing costs that two agencies would have had to have paid for separately. So for example, an audit, an annual audit, you combine that to make one audit, you're paying basically the same amount for those audits. So that can be a savings up to $10,000. And then, so you're looking at savings such as that as you're moving forward. One CEO would be the thought, one executive director versus paying, each of those organizations paying for an executive director. So there's a saving. So as you're moving forward and you're combining things, you're finding ways to do this the most efficient way, such as with the finance, looking for one finance person who's overseeing all the financial services among all the organizations. John, anything else you'd want to add to that? That's how we're looking at things?
Yeah, I tell you what, again, I echo Cheryl's appreciation for you guys taking the time to listen to us today. The thing that I think is important to remember somewhat in this, Jeff and folks, is that the funding needs are for services to people are not going to go away. There's still going to be need for donors and government and things like that involved in funding. But the goal would be, of course, for those funds to be able to be more directed toward service than overhead, and that those services and those board members and those the overhead are better, even better, more engaged, more talented to deliver. And then I think the other thing that I think we've spoken about before is there are some drivers inside each of these, not every entity, but in some of these entities that drives revenue. Crossroads has, we believe, the ability to drive revenue. We also believe that housing, properly done, properly put together with talent involved that can feed the vision of development and the management. We've done some of that, but if we haven't had the talent behind it, we believe that can drive revenue. And those two sources driving revenue should add to the sustainability. We really believe that hope, and not just hope, but believe that the costs that are involved in this first 3 years getting us off the ground, those will be covered in the process of the sustainability, and we'll be able to focus on delivery of quality service to those in need. So I don't know if that helps, but I think there's some strong things there. And I do want to add that this has been an organic process, and probably still will be an organic process. But I think what Cheryl has helped us do by having someone in her position focused has brought some of these entities already to the point where these things are going to be shared, or the costs of them are going to be covered and shared by dissolved, remains to be seen. But I believe that even at the end of 3 years, if we've got where we need to get with just the ones that are involved and a couple of others out there, maybe not even MCSA yet. I mean, there is a process that has to be gone through. But we'll get, I think at the end of 3 years, we'll be exactly headed in the right direction. Maybe not with every entity on board, but certainly every entity collaborating in the process.
So this is Nathan. One question I have is, it sounds like you're planning on realizing a lot of cost savings by rationalizing the management structure, having one director instead of four. What becomes of those 4 individual directors?
Well, as you know, in my presentation, two of the organizations had an interim executive director, and so they are both gone. The third one, MWA, did not have an executive director, but they had at one time a staff person, actually 2 different staff people who were helping provide the services, so they no longer are doing that. And then the idea would be you're still going to need like managers of entities and services. So I would see each of them taking on a role in it, possibly sometimes in a different way or a more stricter role. I'm trying to think of the right word to use. So maybe overlooking one of those buckets that I talked about that you have there.
I think Cheryl has it in place there, and the thing is, Nathan, that each of these people have some very good talents, but when asked to be a director, sometimes the talents get lost in the woods of being a director instead of focused on what they're most talented at. And also, it gives us a manner to develop future CEO, director, whatever you want to term the person, from within the organization so that they have time to develop, that we're not always hiring someone and then having to develop their talent, but we can specifically use their talent and then develop them into the next stages of leadership.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody, at this point, I don't see anyone in any of these entities losing a job unless they decide.
Correct. I agree.
yeah, and I think if I'm not mistaken, I can, my familiarity is a bit old now, like everything with me anymore. But anyway, if I recall, that I use like this CFO, these are some complex organizations because there's a lot of different funding streams, and the requirements and rules can be difficult to follow at best. And some of these smaller agencies didn't have that expertise built within them, and so they would have to either hire it or look for it, or probably more likely live without it, and that can have dire consequences as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The CFO at this stage is probably the real guts and glue that's gonna make this even better than where we've gotten so far. It's really the stage that we needed to get to, and unfortunately, it takes time. It takes more time than any of us really wanted to, but I think if you take the time and you do it right, and you do it with trust and input, the results are going to be better.
Okay.
John, Cheryl, you had mentioned in your presentation that at one time you had thought that the board of directors that was currently for the MCSA, are they still on schedule as all the other board of directors to dissolve and combine into your one, or did you mention something that was going to take longer?
Let's talk about that because you said the word dissolve. And that is, the intent is not to have these places at minimum, a shared management organization. That's so kind of like Y has the overall management organization, but they have Special Olympics, they have Big Brother, Big Sister, or even you might use HNI as an example, or Unity Point Health as an example. The hospital here in Muscatine still has its own hospital ID number and its own corporate ID number. But the overall ownership management sole member of the entity becomes the management. So I know it's complex, but it is done all the time corporately and in systems, health systems and what have you. And so I really don't want the message to be that any of these entities are dissolving or are necessarily losing their identity to the public of the great work they do. But that they'll be able to focus even more on that great work. So that the overall entity may have a management company name, but the programs and projects may have still have the IDs of Senior Resources or Crossroads or MCSA, depending on the entity, and understandably so. So that being said, the progress that MCSA has made compared to the other two, they didn't need to make progress as quickly as the other two with interim CEOs and things like that needed to be fixed. And but the collaborative process is right on target. They're waiting anxiously for that CFO to be able to help them because they know they need that kind of help. They are sharing in, as Cheryl said, the development of employment training opportunities, maintenance. So I think we're actually Cheryl may disagree and some of our board may disagree, but I think we're right on target with the 3-year plan and maybe a little ahead of target.
Okay, good. Again, it was more around just being under the correct umbrella, if you want to say. It wasn't just a me saying this all. It was more around just the language and understanding what was the reason that they were timed differently.
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate that. It is language in this process becomes real important. And you know how you can raise a red flag with just not being aware. And it's not your fault. I don't want them to think I walked away from this meeting and said, boy, these entities are going to dissolve and we're just going to have one entity because I'm not sure that's the goal. But I think MCSA is in a stronger position in their organization, and that this process has become owned more slowly by them, and some more meat that needs to go on the bones, like a CFO, to show how their organization is going to fit together financially and it's going to be beneficial to all concerned. Kind of a rotary term, right? Beneficial to all concerned.
Yeah, I think, John, I would echo your sentiments. We see on this board, we see a number of funding requests every year, and one of the things that always surprises me is a lot of these smaller agencies are challenged by the very items that you mentioned. You know, the financial management aspect, kind of just the administrative side of it. We have great people doing great work, but when a lot of their dollars go to rents and utilities and maintenance and we don't have a more cohesive, you know, kind of off on your own, it can be a bigger challenge to them than if it were a larger organization. And I've seen that with Crossroads and MCSA. They're larger organizations with larger revenue streams, quite frankly, or funding sources, and they've been able to put in capabilities that others probably are not able to. to help them grow and expand or continue to provide services, actually.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And so with those entities, you have to be able to show the talent that's going to improve their ability to deliver the services they're trying to deliver to their customers.
Okay. So, I think that we'll note that, and then, as we talked about last year, I know we had a timing issue. So the board will go out somewhere around December, early December. We'll take formal requests for funding. And Cheryl, I'll just make sure that you're on Sherry Seawright's list when that happens, so that we can put it into our budget deliberation process this year, and the board can have these discussions.
Okay, thank you.
Just briefly, real quick, what is the funding request amount that we're having for this? What was the total?
You know, Santos, the funding request, I can't remember. Maybe Nancy remembers what we talked about last time.
My rough idea was 60,000 a year for 3 years, something like that, which puts you at about that 80,000, 180. But maybe it'll be different.
I hate to say, I think it was actually, if we were hoping that if we got the city and you, and we have a few more people we have talked to that are still, that are strongly favorable, but we haven't got the commitment yet. I think maybe if Jeff, it was 20 grand a year from the city and the county to for each of them to get us up to 120, and then the remainder would come on the outside. And I think that might still be where we're at, but we are not going to ask for more money than we think we need. And we are not going to spend more money than we think we need. So if we have commitments from folks, and we've gotten down the road far enough that we don't have to ask them to make their part of their commitment, we might still ask them, but we might tell them that revenue is going to go directly to service. So I mean, we're just not ask for money and spend it because we got it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Good to hear.
Okay, does anybody else have questions for John, or further questions for John or Cheryl this morning?
Thanks, guys.
If not, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very informative, and we'll look forward to talking to you later or early on next year, probably.
All right, thank you very much.
Yep.
Thanks for your time, folks.
Okay. Item number 7, or items with Information Services Director Bill Riley. Item 7A is discussion of possible action authorizing the chair to execute a memorandum of understanding for enhanced security services between the Office of the Chief Information Officer of the State of Iowa and Muscatine County.
Good morning.
Good morning, Bill.
And this is actually more of just a formal agreement between us and the state for services that we have been using for the past several years. The state provides us, off the top of my head, 3 services that we take advantage of. The first one being a FireEye client that we have installed on all of our endpoints as well as our servers, that helps detect and can help to prevent the spread of malware, such as ransomware and so forth. And this just basically sits on our systems and reports back to the state. Their security operations center is manned not 24/7, 7 days a week, but they are manned, I believe, 7 days a week. Weekends are shorter hours, but weekdays I think are 7 a.m. or 6 a.m., somewhere in there, until about 10 p.m. And then it's a shortened time window on the weekends. They have detected things in the past. So far, everything has been negative except for one potential link that somebody clicked on the website. So it has proven service. The next thing that they provide is an intrusion detection system that sits behind our firewalls and monitors for any traffic going to known malicious websites or what are considered to be command and control centers. So that once, say, ransomware has been downloaded and it's building itself on your network, it reports back to these command and control centers so it gets its next set of instructions. And the third thing that we're using is a vulnerability scanner that scans our network for items that have missing patches or critical alerts that we need to address. All of these things, again, have been in use for the past several years and have shown value. This is just a formal agreement between us and the state.
Bill, in this agreement, I didn't see costs attached to some of the items. Were there? So
There
these
is
are
no-
provided to the county at no cost from the state?
Correct. These are all provided to or through the state, through grant funds, that if those grant funds were to run out and we wanted to continue some type of service like that, at that point in time, we may need to look at, a spend. But right now, everything has been covered 100% by grants.
And then I saw some language in there, maybe I'm getting the judicial and this confused. I saw some language where there was it was like more open-ended, where they may add services, but this agreement would not obligate us to any funding without a separate addendum to the agreement, correct?
They already have services that we don't take part of
Okay,
because we have something in place that is better than what they're offering us. So we use a service called Cisco Umbrella that routes all our DNS traffic and helps block malicious activity through DNS as opposed to looking at signature files, so forth. They have something similar to that, but it's a very streamlined version of what services we're able to provide through that. So we're able to provide web filtering, which their service would not provide, to help prevent people from going to, questionable websites or what have you. And those may be changed based on a person's department. So there's no value for us to take part in that service because then we're going to have to replace some portions of that through something else. And then the joint consortium MS ISAC, which I believe is it EI ISAC as well, which is a multi-state consortium that provides some services. They're now starting to offer up some services to counties and local organizations that they can take part of, which we're going to start paying more attention to those and seeing if we can jump on some of those because they're going to be free of cost as well, and eliminate some things that maybe we do have a monthly or an annual spend on.
okay.
So, and they are constantly looking at ways that they can improve this. One of the things I think that they're hoping to get to is 24/7 staffed security operations center, better reporting, and so forth. They also keep looking at newer technologies to replace existing that they're using. So it's been very beneficial to Muscatine County as well as other county school districts and cities throughout the state.
So in light of our previous conversation here, just with the Vision 2020 folks, some of these services, are there opportunities for some of these agencies that we help fund or we fund that we would be able to extend some of those services, or is that kind of a stretch?
I think that would be a stretch. That would be something that we'd have to reach out to the OCIO to find out about. But to my knowledge, it's offered to county, city, and school districts. But
Yeah,
again,
I
I
think
could
that-
be mistaken on that, so.
I think that a lot of this demands 24/7 monitoring. And
Correct.
small county, we can't afford that. We can't afford the staffing and the people to do that. So I applaud the state for having that and helping counties with it, or even ISAC if they're the ones doing it. It's just each individual county of our size, we just can't afford it.
We do have a supplemental to the FireEye client that we have installed
Yeah.
that we approved through Tyler.
Yeah.
for this, beginning of this fiscal year. And that does give us the 24/7 aspect of it, but it's not as fast to respond as, say, the FireEye client would be. And we have an agreement with the state that they can't reach us during the staffing hours, that they have the ability to quarantine some endpoint if necessary to help prevent a spread, where we cannot do that with the Tyler Detect product.
Okay. So are there other questions for Bill? If not, I'd look for a motion.
But I got one question, Bill. You mentioned about the vulnerability assessments that they would be doing, making sure for malware and potential, breaches in our system. Do we have any, do they just monitor, or do they actually do tests to attempt to see if our system has any openings?
No, it's more of a passive monitoring system. We do get a weekly report from them to show us what our, say, vulnerabilities are, overall average vulnerability rating per host. But they do not do any type of pen testing or network security testing.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Bill. That's all I had, Jeff.
Okay. There are other questions? If not, I would accept a motion.
I would move to approve.
I have a motion by Scott,
I'll second.
second by Nathan. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, Santos got you. All right, any opposed? I'm gonna have to slow down for Santos, his trigger finger's a little slow. Okay, item B, discussion of possible action regarding a judicial branch information technology request.
This is a request by Judicial Branch that they have some dollars from CARES that they're looking to upgrade, I believe, about 90 courtrooms throughout the state, so that they're all on the same technology package. And there are some questionable references in this agreement that Jim has noted in his response, that, we don't want to sign off on basically a blank check for them. And we will be meeting with them somewhere around the first week of December, hopefully, to look at what we have in both the large courtroom and the small courtroom on the 3rd floors, to see how we can integrate what they're offering with our existing solutions in the large courtroom, and then to make sure that they can do what they want to do in the smaller courtroom, hopefully with, a minimal impact to the aesthetics of the room. So
We did this courtroom less than a year ago.
right, and
What the heck?
this is going to provide enhancements primarily for virtual hearings. And it's going to provide things that we don't currently have. Some of the offerings we already have in the large courtroom, but we're hoping to gain some other benefits where we would be able to do a complete virtual trial if necessary. That is my understanding from the state, but again, that's not necessarily my thing on the legal side. Mine's just the tech side.
Jim, I guess this is more a question for you then. What is it we're lacking that prevents us from holding those virtually in the current system?
Well, they don't have a system in place and the camera to run a court proceeding beyond facing the camera at a witness, and that's what you see. So that's their current capability, so I think this is intended
It's going to
to
provide 4 cameras. It's going to provide a single control center, whether that be for the judge or the clerk, to help monitor and so forth, the volume levels and all that. It's really just going to be a supplemental to what we have, and so we need to figure out how we can integrate what they're offering with what we already have, so we'll have a complete system.
Do we have any kind of numbers on this?
They're providing almost everything except for the electrical and any floor or, actually any floor coverings that we would need for any exposed wiring. And they should be able to reimburse us for both of those, or a portion of both of those, but that's where the questions come in. We don't have those dollars yet. We have to meet with them to find out what they're looking to do, so that we can find out from an electrician what those costs may be. And so I will meet with this judicial, I will include maintenance, and I will include FSS or JJ for the audio, video equipment that we already have in the room, to see how all that can work better together. And then this will also improve, hopefully on the smaller courtroom side, how they're able to handle some of those virtual hearings or virtual arraignments.
Maybe I'm being nitpicky, but if the hearings are virtual, I presume the witnesses and the attorneys and such will not be present in the courtroom.
That I cannot answer because I
mean,
guess I hadn't thought about that. Yes, that would be probably.
So I don't know what the need for a virtual system that focuses on all the people in the courtroom would be.
Maybe you can just get avatars to put in those locations. I don't know.
I want to hear a lot more about this. When did we first hear about this?
10 days ago, 2 weeks,
Super.
possibly.
Yeah, I'd like a little bit more lead time too before we commit to something we don't know exactly what we're committing to.
And that's precisely with Jim's help, we determined how to respond to this, to
I
say,
appreciate that.
we're willing to move forward, but we're not committing to anything because we want to protect not only the aesthetics of a courtroom that we just put a lot of money into remodeling, but we're not giving you a blank check in terms of what the cost might be to us.
Yeah, without any kind of understanding of exactly what they're planning to do. I think when we remodeled that courtroom, they did a nice job of putting raceways and things like that in to support technology. But I can also understand that virtual court might be different than just televised or whatever, or additional. Yeah, and I appreciate, Jim, your responses on those. I thought they were
Very
well-written and very, they didn't pin us down to anything, but they also said, we're willing to work with you and look at this, but we really have to understand the implications. And I do know, in talking with the sheriff's office and some of the work we've done at the jail with the virtual, it's been really the law enforcement, I know from the federal level has really appreciated the effort. So I think if we wanna be hospitable, and we want the courts to be comfortable here, because we certainly value them and want them here.
Correct. And I think that some of this, back to Nathan's question, might be more when we're having a jury trial, when we would have people present.
Sure.
In the courtroom, that's where we're going to have the 4 cameras in operation.
Mm-hmm.
So today, we're just looking for action from the board to approve basically what we saw, the responses. That
You're basically authorizing me to sign that document as presented, saying we're gonna keep the conversation open and we want more information.
Yeah, I think in the document, we didn't really commit to anything, we just said
Right.
we're willing to work with you. What we need to understand better and have more clarification on what we would be required.
Do we need action for that?
Well, I have it on as possible decision, possible action. So, yeah, if you want to take action, the action would just be to authorize me to sign that document on behalf of the board.
I think I would be more comfortable taking action, so don't put Nancy into a bad spot if something happened or they get around that the board's aware of anything that we signed and sent, and I think it would be just good.
And I've had verbal conversations with the judicial tech people, letting them know that, we need a lot more information before we're gonna sign off on anything.
So you would be having us authorize you to sign page 4 of this request that authorizes the full courtroom installation? Or am I looking at the wrong thing?
My fingers don't work if I can't get them wet.
I just have 2 pages and it would be
Yeah,
signed the
page.
second page.
Okay, I see, I've got my item 7B has 4 pages, the first
Right, so it's the end of the last
2 are
page.
email, so the one where your signature, I, Nancy Driver, authorize and approve the full courtroom system installation.
We're signing that document, but with the stipulations that are on the first page that that we marked yes to the things, but with some caveats about, um,
I couldn't change their form.
I understand, I understand.
I could type in those boxes, but beyond that, I wasn't permitted to, I would have changed that as limited herein, but I couldn't do anything with the form.
Our comments in the county representative boxes certainly aren't binding on them.
No,
It's more like a signing statement.
basically saying, we wanna work with you, but we need more information.
I say let's put this on hold for a week, get more information. I don't like signing anything before, and saying, we signed this, we don't know exactly what it is, we're trusting you to give us more information. I'm all for trust, but I'm also for verify. If we put this on hold for a week, does it,
putting it on hold for a week won't accomplish anything because they're not available to meet with Bill until the beginning of December. And basically what they're saying is they want this signed, they want this back by today to even keep the Muscatine County courthouse in the running for the 90 systems that they have available.
so
Is
if
my
we don't sign
understanding.
it, we lose the opportunity possibly?
That's
Possibly.
potentially, yeah.
I love these high pressure sales tactics.
I don't wanna advise you one way or the other on this, because I think it's a great opportunity, but
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of unknowns. And I can tell you roughly, if we were to look at doing something similar, just on our own dollar,
Yeah.
for the large courtroom, probably somewhere between $4,000 and $10,000. For the smaller courtroom, you're probably looking at that plus maybe some more electrical or more wiring as to how well you
So
work.
total exposure to the board, to the county might be worst case if they came through with nothing and we were committed to something, you know, you're not looking at, 500,000, you're looking at $20,000-$30,000 total
That
project.
would be
and
my
we'd have
guess,
some
just for
portion thereof.
what's on the hardware side of things. You know, the unknowns are really the electrical. If we get into the nitty gritty, that, you know, we want all this actually trenched out in the courtroom floor, covered up, made to look, you know.
Well, and that
That's
being
good.
said, I suppose if we sign it, they come back with stuff that's completely unacceptable to us, we can lock the door.
Well, and I think the other point here is I think that the expectation is that we would provide the electrical to what they needed. So if they want to do something that we're just absolutely opposed to, we also can say, no, we're not gonna fund the electrical, and that may stop it. But you're right, ultimately, we own the building.
I mean, it's not like they're gonna take us to court to force us to let them install stuff in our courtroom if we don't want them to.
Yeah, I think they have a certain amount of money, they're willing to buy certain equipment,
Yeah.
they just want to understand the county will pick up the pieces as it relates to the facility, and that's what they're looking for. The problem is they can't tell you what that looks like, and therein is the rub.
Well, sure, they need to come in and site survey, and their techs need to look at it and work with our techs, so we have a better
I
understanding.
think there will be some electrical issues that we're gonna have to
Oh,
overcome.
there will be,
But
but
I just wish that they would have, done their documents differently, to where you'd say, you know, we're willing to work with you and consider spending, but not necessarily.
upon completion of.
Doesn't
site
look like it's,
survey,
yeah, on completion of a site survey and a cost estimate, you know, we would be, you know.
Well, there'll be some cost sharing there, we just don't know what our share might be, but,
Or if we'll get
We may-
100% reimbursement.
possibly, I'm
Right.
certainly not counting on that. I'll put it that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what I'm more concerned about is what our best guess is at a maximum outlay of county funds. That, I'm with Jeff on this,
I really couldn't tell you, I can only, you know,
Yeah.
guesstimate on the hardware portion of what they're offering for their go-to meeting capable package. And so the installation and all that stuff, I wouldn't be able to
I
venture a guess on
couldn't
that.
imagine it'd be $10,000,
Yeah.
in electrical, I mean, you know, that building we've got good service over there, and it's a bit of a challenge to run things, but, so you put wire mold on the wall and you run a cover over the floor, that's the worst case.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't be too happy about in the big courtroom, but we'd have a little bit of that going on anyway, so.
Potentially, yeah.
Well, right now, we do have a little bit of that going on.
Yeah.
The way that we have it set up so that the jurors that are seated in the gallery area would be able to view what's on the projector screen.
And You do the best you can, and
Yeah.
anytime you get
Right.
up to the floor, it's a guess.
Well, and COVID has certainly changed the way the courtroom was laid out and used before in ways we didn't anticipate having to change it, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't make any difference if this courtroom was redone 10 years ago or a year ago. The situation is going to be the same.
Right.
Going forward with COVID here, obviously. And, you know, there's a little bit of risk on our behalf, cost-wise and cash outlay, to accommodate this going forward.
Well, and I think this document, the way we respond to it, I guess I feel like, and I think Jim agrees with me, that we're not locked into anything.
Yeah.
We're simply saying we're willing to continue to have this conversation and see if we can come to some sort of mutual agreement about what that might look like and what that might cost.
I can't imagine they're not looking at a similar response from other counties, because, you know, what we're talking about here is not,
Unique.
yeah, it's not, and it's not, something that everybody wouldn't be considering having read this,
Right. I mean, I understand. Every county watches their dollars.
and they should.
And I think the courts are well aware that Muscatine County has never provided a blank check. And we don't intend to now.
That's a safe bet.
Okay, so what's the desire of the board?
I'll move to approve it,
Okay.
as I trust you guys.
I have a motion by
I'll second.
Nathan and a second by Scott. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Santos?
I'm good.
I'm good.
You're good, he said, that was
Is that an
aye?
aye?
Okay,
That was an aye.
All right.
Opposed, the same? Motion carries. Okay, anything else, Bill?
I have nothing at this time unless you have something for me.
I don't think so. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
I appreciate the work on those items, thank you. Item number 8, or item of the county engineer Keith White. Item 8A is discussion possible action to approve the purchase of a single axle snow glider truck.
Good morning, you have the information in your packet there, there's a lot more research went into this than shows on the simple page there. Mack has came out with an actual single axle truck, that is their price, not a lot less than a tandem in their case. We were looking here for cost savings. On their trade allowance, the twin to 21 that we traded last year, they gave us 30. And now they're offering 20 on a truck that we actually think's worth more than the one last year. They did offer to take it on consignment and asked like 35 for it. We also talked to Peterbilt. They had a truck that's not quite equipped like we would like, but the truck cab chassis was in that price range that you see there. And the trade is more in line with what we feel we should receive for that truck. There's a reason we feel it's worth $5,000 more than the one last year. And their number is aggressive because they want our business. And all I'm asking for today is permission to order the cab chassis. Notes down there, farther down on the page, the Mack truck wouldn't be available till the summer of next year. Peterbilt should come in the first quarter if we get it ordered before the end of the year. The Swenson Hinky snow, which is what we've been running, is about 100 days out. Monroe, we went back to kind of as a price check, and they're 10 months to a year out.
So frankly, if we wanna get one of these built and in service for next year, then we need to be looking at moving ahead. So questions on this?
There's a lot of price difference between the two trucks.
There is, and, again, we were looking to, see some actual savings over a tandem, and, so we simply weren't gonna get there with the Mac.
So you run any Peterbilts now?
No. The city I know runs Peterbilt in their single axe trucks. I mean, it's a better caliber truck, just like the Mac.
So you don't have reservations about that? I know at one point, you were pretty happy with the Max, they performed.
We are, and I think in the next tandem purchase, which is probably another year off, we'll be looking at Max in the tandems, but this is something we wanted to try out in a single axe, and it'll either ultimately be a success and we can save some dollars there, or we'll say, no, it really wasn't worth it, to be quite honest. I mean, the day used to be when you could buy 2 of these for the price of a tandem, and that's just not true anymore.
So your recommendation, Keith, would be to go, look for the Peterbilt with the
Yes,
Swenson Hinky snow fighting equipment?
yes.
Do we have other questions for Keith, or?
Peterbilt's a pretty good name too.
Yeah.
Trucks, you know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some question about that, price difference.
Yeah, it's a pretty they give you a pretty compelling argument.
Yes, they did, they did.
Yeah. You know, it's nice to keep the same type of equipment and that, I understand that, but, there's times that sometimes they can buy a little business.
Right. And I said Mac had not offered a heavy-duty single axe until this year, and they're very proud of it, and we'll see if they sell any at those numbers.
Well, I'm also not necessarily a person of purchasing first-year products.
All right.
I can have some reservations there at times.
Mm-hmm.
Are you looking for a motion?
Yep.
I would move to purchase the Peterbilt, with the Swanson Hinky, equipment.
Okay, I have a motion by Scott, and I have a second by Doug. Is there any further discussion?
I did have one question, Jeff. On this, do we normally, or I don't think I may have asked this before, do we normally get those undercoated by the manufacturer that we're purchasing those, or do you do that second party out somewhere else?
For the larger trucks, normally the manufacturer.
Did you hear that, Santos?
Yeah, but for this one, being that it's just a single, or do we go send that out ourselves once we get them here?
It'll still be a larger truck.
Okay.
We'll be
Okay,
back.
so it's okay.
Okay, any other questions? Have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Motion carries. You have a projects update this morning, Keith?
Yes, Hire is paving on G28 as we speak. They really just got started because they're waiting for temps to come up in this fast. Temperatures.
Okay,
When I say temps.
threw me for a little loop there a minute.
When I say temps, I mean temperature.
Yeah, okay.
34 and rising. No issue there, but that's why they're really just now getting started. This is the last mainline pour. If everything goes well and they get through that, then they've got some hand pours to connect up Lutheran homes and the peat moss plant. If they get this done, Peterson, PCI should be placing riprap, or erosion stone really on the hill. And, trying to think what else they've got, well, and the cedar would be coming in and doing temp seed, for over the winter. And so we're getting close to having that open to traffic. That's kind of it in the construction world. Kind of construction, but design side, the bridge on Douglas Avenue, we've obtained the construction easement from the Heritage, whatever the trail outfit is now. That's changed a little bit, but we have the temporary construction, but we still need to deal with the property owners on the east side, and that's one I'd mentioned before that is going to flooding this winter. And that's it. Any questions?
Case on G28, how much footage do you think we have left to pave? You mentioned that DCR was still doing, I think, today. How much do you have to complete that project? Is it
I'm gonna
half a
throw
mile,
out,
quarter mile?
I'm gonna throw out 800 feet.
Catch that, Santos?
I didn't. You said 100 feet or a couple hundred feet? I don't know.
800, he's estimating about 800 feet, Santos.
Okay, excellent, excellent. And did you give us an update on the county building, how we were coming along over there in your offices?
I did not. I'm not sure.
Your parking lot's done, right?
Yes.
Keith's all wrapped up over there. Are you talking about the?
Okay, that's what I wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know if we were complete over there, if there was anything more left on that.
No, I think they wrapped that up a few weeks back. And
Well, no, I mean, they just got it seeded.
Okay.
So, but we are complete on the parking lot.
Okay. All right, no, I just wanted to make sure, I wasn't sure if I missed that portion, I didn't hear that, that's all.
Okay. Anything else, Santos?
No, I'm good, thank you, Keith, Jim.
Anybody else have anything for Keith? Thank you, Keith. Okay, item number 9, items of the county auditor. Item 9A is discuss and possible action to approve the 2020 urban renewal report. Should have been in everybody's box. Any questions or comments for our auditor? I see she's with us this morning. If not, I would accept a motion for approval. I have a motion by Scott, second by Doug. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same?
Aye.
Yes, okay, thanks, Santos. Opposed, the same? Motion carries. Got that sushi. Okay, item number 9, discussion of possible action to order a recount of the U.S. Representative District 2 race from the November 3rd, 2020 general election. I believe that was a statewide race that was under 1%, so the counties are being asked.
It's a statewide race for our district, there's 24 counties in that race, and we've all been ordered
Asked by the Secretary of State to order a recount.
And you have to physically order the recount for our
Okay.
counties.
And that's a Millimeter heart race.
Yep. So I would accept a motion and,
So moved.
I have a motion by Scott,
Second by Steve.
He can have it.
second by Santos. Is there any?
Yes.
So, when,
What'd you say?
He said yes.
You said yes. To what?
He's ahead of you this
So
time.
yes,
Okay.
that was me.
He's good. He's good.
We're good.
I can't see you guys.
How long until this next round is certified? Do we have to come meet and recanvass that then?
If there is any change in any of the count, regardless of if it's one vote or
Okay.
whatever the change might be, if there's a change, then yes, I'll have to come back to you within 3 days of them compiling their report, and you'll have to recanvass that race.
Okay.
If there's no change, then there will be nothing for you guys to meet to canvass, but.
And-
you know, if
And
there's
when,
any
how
change-
long do you have, to do the recount?
recount has to be completed by November 30th, which is the Monday after Thanksgiving. Our goal is to get it done prior to Thanksgiving.
Good goal.
And you know, have you hopefully either canvass it next Monday or the following Monday, or hopefully we don't have to bring in, depends when it finishes. You have to do it within 3 days.
What exactly is the process you go through? Have they specified machine versus hand?
Not yet, they're still picking third person, we have the first two people. The candidate that filed for it, Rita Hart, already provided her, recount board member when she made the application.
Sure.
The Miller Meeks campaign appointed theirs over the weekend, and those two are now talking today to try to come up with a third person.
Okay.
They technically have till Thursday morning, but they're trying to do it as quickly as they can, because we would like to get it started this week if at all possible.
Yeah,
Because of Thanksgiving next week.
right.
We're trying not to have to screw up everybody's
Yeah, you'll have
Thanksgiving.
difficulty staffing the
Yeah.
count.
Yeah. So, as far as machine or hand, that's totally up to the three on the recount board. My impression from the first two is they would like to get it done as quickly and expeditiously as possible, which does not probably mean a hand recount. A hand recount would take a long time on $20,000. But that's totally up to them. The impression I got from both of them is they're both thinking machine.
Gotcha, thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Okay, so I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Do you have anything else for the board this morning, Leslie?
I don't have anything, right now. I just kind of stopped in case you have any questions on those items.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, item number 10 is discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of the November 9th, 2020 regular meeting and the November 10th, 2020 special meeting. I have a motion by Scott and a second by Nathan. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Hi.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item 11 is correspondence. Nathan, did you have anything?
I did, so, on Thursday of last week, I had discussion with, city manager, the assistant city manager, city clerk, mayor, and a couple council members of West Liberty. They were curious as to our ATV, UTV, statute. I had informed them that I'd sure be happy to send them what we looked at last week, but that it was likely to change, given the discussions we've had with the county attorney. So I guess I would just ask, as you guys update that, keep them in the loop. I think they're interested in kind of piggybacking off of it, or at least talking about it. Also, I had discussion a couple different times last week with some county residents who are concerned about fireworks. And I kind of drilled down on that with them, and what they told me is specifically kind of excessive use of fireworks for several days after the permissible periods, including the 4th of July this weekend. And these, as far as I know, this took place solely within the city of Muscatine, and they were concerned that the law enforcement officials didn't, really didn't have the means or the wherewithal to be able to police all of that. I said I'd bring it up for discussion, but it sounds like most of this is something that they need to take to the city. So I think this person meant speaking to the mayor, but I also suggested they talk to city administration and their council members.
Very good. Santos, did you have any correspondence?
All I had was just the update that we had gotten from public health in regards to COVID. We got another email on Campbell Road, regards to just following up and making sure that they're involved in the next discussion on that. ATV ordinance, and I also emailed the ordinance as well to the city administrator of West Liberty. So I appreciate that follow-up also, Nathan, on that.
Yep.
And just a Mike Nolan update as well. That's all I have.
Thank you, Santos. I had nothing outside of that to note. I did have a couple of meetings last night. Staff and I had an introductory meeting where we talked briefly about the levy stakeholders, progress of that project with the new city administrator, the Muscatine, and the finance director, Nancy Leake. That was attended by Sherry Seawright, Nancy Schreiber, and I. I also met, and Santos and I actually met with a group of community leaders that are working through this community foundation on affordable housing initiatives and trying to put some clarity and strategy towards that. So that was it for correspondence from me last week. Scott?
I had 2 calls this week in regard to the ATV, UTV ordinance, and both of them were positive calls, and just wanting to find out just a little information straight from someone on a couple questions they had, and that was it.
Okay. Doug?
I had updates from Mike Nolan and Eric Furnace from the sheriff's quarters and code report. Other than that, I have nothing, no committees.
Okay. No committees? Scott, did you have any
I
committees?
did not have a committee this past week.
I had no committees. Nathan?
I had the 7th Judicial District Department of Corrections Board meeting. We approved our annual report for submission. A couple of the members raised concerns about, with the spike in coronavirus cases, the level of beds, the number of beds and hospital accommodations that were available, what we should do. So that's, I think, something we should be discussing and staying informed on here as well as we kind of head into this. But that was the only one I had.
Okay. Santos, how about yourself? Committee reports?
I had the Wee League meeting on Friday, and we ended up having a onboarding meeting also with the new Wee League director, Joseph Taylor. That will be part of the new director for Wee League. And just happy to have him on board. I think it's going to be a good addition to the Wee League in regards to him being able to be a new leader in regards to the economic development for West Liberty.
Very good.
That's all I have. And then the housing meeting that we had earlier in the month as well. Earlier in the week, I'm sorry.
Yep. Thank you, Santos. Okay, item number 13, items with the administration office. 13A is discussion and direction regarding employee handbook update assistance.
So our employee handbook, the last time it was completely revised and updated was like 2004. We've had a few issues come up lately that have made it very clear that we have some areas that we need to clean up. The attorney that our insurance carrier has hired for our use in a couple of employee situations we've had in the last 6 months has indicated, and she's very familiar with what our handbook looks like now because of the issues we've been through, and has indicated a willingness to help us with updates that are desperately needed. Her best guesstimate of a price for that is $5,000 or less, which our county attorney has graciously offered to cover with some of the additional fines collection money that his office has been getting. And so we're just looking for the okay from you guys to move forward with doing that.
Sounds good to me. That seems like a reasonable price for an organization of our size and something that, yeah, is absolutely needed.
And really appreciate Jim and your office stepping up to cover that expenditure.
Well, it's not something I'm intimately familiar with. She is, from the sake of time and being comprehensive. It seemed to me like it was a good use of those public resources.
Perfect. Okay, so is this on for action or just?
No,
direction?
I just need direction, and if a consensus from you guys that it's okay to proceed will work.
Yeah, I think that
Sounds great.
makes perfect sense, Nancy.
Thank you.
And thank you, Jim and Nancy.
I'm good with it.
Okay, thank you, Santos. Okay, item 11B, discussion and direction regarding possible revisions to the Muscatine County Buildings COVID-19 safety guidelines. We had this discussion, I had it with a number of you individually last week. We obviously were wearing masks in light of the governor's recent proclamations. I think we want to try to stay to those, adhere to them as best possible. Do we feel that there's a need to make changes to our buildings and grounds, kind of? I know the city of Muscatine, I had a conversation with them last week, and they have gone to a mandatory masking in all their public facilities. So I actually have employees that said they were told at the transfer station they now just need to bring wearing masks there, only when they come into the offices. So I think just for sake of public, I'd like to be consistent, around public buildings, and I wanted to get the board's thoughts. And do we have an opinion, Nancy, Jim, about, are we currently operating within the governor's guidelines in most of our offices, do we believe?
Well, any public that comes in my office is required to mask and hand sanitize when they come in. Employees, if they're really in their offices and not meeting with somebody, aren't masking. Our number is 8, and we're all spaced, at least in my office. As for the courthouse, the court did shut down next Wednesday, the 25th. There was an order that came out from the chief judge Friday. I've already talked with the 2 employees from my office over there one had vacation day and the other one's taking half a day. So at this point, the courthouse from court perspective has not been restricted further other than continuing to use masks. That could change. And so, that's what I can tell you is going on in my office and with the court system at this point. Otherwise, I think when Nancy and I talked, we just wanted to be able to make sure that, you folks were aware, as you probably were, that things were changing again and could change, and it could be sort of a spur of the moment thing. And so we just wanted to be prepared and have the discussion.
And I know on this building, we ask people to wear a mask when they enter.
We do ask people to wear a mask when they enter. I think most of the people that enter this building are doing so. We really haven't had an issue there. The employees have done an excellent job of when they're not in their own areas and able to social distance to be wearing masks, like when they're going down the hallways or going to other offices. I think voluntarily we've accomplished that pretty well.
Yeah, and I would agree with that, and I don't think we've had big issues in this building. Any contact tracing wouldn't say it anyway, I don't believe. And the city also indicated that they did not mandate it at the employee level. If an employee can stay at a safe distance and stay isolated and they choose not to wear a mask, that's absolutely fine.
And we continue to encourage our employees, if they're feeling sick at all, if they have any even potential symptoms, that they stay home and get tested if that's needed, or stay until they feel better before they return. So we haven't seen a big outbreak, at least among employees in this building. So some of our other departments, we've seen a few more, but there certainly are situations where it's difficult to social distance or follow those guidelines.
So the only other buildings we have, I don't know, is Felicia on this morning?
Not that I've seen.
I don't know what we're doing.
I think they're essentially doing what we're doing. They're following the guidelines, and most of the people are masking. They have masks available for people some of their clientele that come in.
Engineer's office out there, we're doing pretty much kind of what we're doing here. If you ask people, we're not requiring a mask or asking them to wear them, or.
We don't have anybody in the door very rarely.
And I know Eric isn't here this morning, but they get more traffic, I think, than probably the engineer's office out there.
Eric is online.
Is he? Eric, are you online with us this morning,
Yes.
Eric?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep. So what steps have you taken, or your staff, and do you feel that they're adequate, or do we need to put? We're kind of on our doors. I think we're saying we're requiring a mask if general public comes in. I don't know if you're doing that in the zoning office, or if you get a lot of visitors, or if you're more going out.
Well, we get a fair amount of traffic. We've posted the notices on the door requesting that they please consider wearing a mask. Obviously, do not enter if you're feeling ill. I'm probably gonna go pick up another box of just the disposable masks and just make sure that we have some available for the public. But a lot of people that come in the door, they ask, do you want us to wear a mask? And a lot of people are. But we'll just provide them. We have hand sanitizer available, and they purchase those shields for the counter. So, absent any directive from you folks, my intention was just to continue that plan.
And this point of clarification, our door sign do not require masks. We ask people to wear masks. The only place where we have a requirement right now was the language I added to the agenda about coming into this meeting, because obviously there really is no way to social distance for some of the folks in this room.
Yeah, and I if you start requiring, then you gotta start about enforcement, and I don't know if this board's interested in getting into the enforcement business.
Right.
You just cause too many problems. I think, generally speaking, I mean, Scott and I had this conversation the other day, I'm out and about a lot. When I go into the grocery store, I go into the hardware stores and stuff, I'm seeing very high compliance with masking. I mean, you get that one or two here and there, but generally speaking, I see a lot of people with masks all the time, and so I think people are being pretty conscientious about it. I know we're seeing an uptick, but I also see a lot of masks, so we'll do what we can, and I think if we continue to keep signage on our doors and request people to wear masks, and, do the best we can.
And just be aware that, given what the numbers are doing right now, the governor certainly may come out with a stronger proclamation, and so, in which case, we'll reach out to you guys about if we need to make any changes in terms of
Yeah.
building access.
I think it'll be pretty fluid, and I think the board needs to stay. I appreciate your recommendations on the meetings. I think that virtual meetings have been going okay, and I appreciate everybody's working with it today. And I know sometimes it can be a pain, but we'll do what we can, okay? So I think direction is we continue the course, and again, I would say that our leaders in the building, they kind of put that on staff to be responsible and understand the rules and manage the way they see fit best.
Yeah, I think the public is aware that there's been an uptick out there, and I think they're more conscientious of their own surroundings in any city, county, retail operations, and I think overall, the public is doing a pretty good job on their own behalf, so we'll see how this rolls.
Okay.
Yeah, I surely expect more the governor to restrict some things a little bit further here very soon, with the numbers I'm seeing, okay? I mean, Muscatine County, we looked like we had a peak and we're down a little bit, so, do you have anything else, Nancy?
I do not.
Okay, so we'll go receive information from county employees. I know, Brian, maybe you've got some latest and we can chat a bit.
Yeah, I do have the latest numbers on our COVID-19 for Muscatine County. Positive cases is 2,320. Recovered is 1,292. So roughly, based on the statistics or what the state of Iowa is reporting, there has been a lot of delay moving up, moving down to local public health. We should be at around over 1,000 cases in Muscatine County currently. Total deaths is 61. The Muscatine County School Districts, the percentage of positive cases is 24.9.
So that's up a bit
That
more this week.
is up, it is up. The high school has gone to remote learning. I believe tonight the the school board will be discussing what they want to pursue with the other schools. It's also my knowledge that West Liberty has also been applying and seeking permission to go into that direction, so. Yes, our numbers are going up, we continue to monitor things. As you've seen in the Muscatine Journal, the hospitals have been appealing, you know, it is definitely, I'm concerned with it. I'm beginning to start receiving some requests for PPE. So it's just something to continue to monitor and see where we're going with that.
And Brian, you feel like the kind of emergency management's PPE supplies, we've got adequate amounts to, you know, for our first responders and some of those folks that are kind of always in harm's way?
The Iowa Homeland Security and Emergency Management has been providing since the beginning of this, you know, but how much can they continue to provide? Initially, in March, we were pretty good at doing that. Then it got to that point where we lowered the curve, and I have been encouraging a lot of facilities to get PPE in advance, because we were anticipating that this winter was going to be, we'll see an increase, and a lot of places have, but again, we're starting to hit that numbers, so what the state was doing was delivering directly to counties. Now I have a region in Region 5, so we have a warehouse, but I still have a good communications with the state and am able to get, it might be where I have to go up to that regional warehouse, or they might be able to bring it back to me, but presently I'm doing good right now.
Okay, good, thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Any other county employees have something we should share? Jim?
I just had a couple of quick items. One, appreciate your action last week on the Jeep. Delivered that to the zoning folks. So that's been completed. And then secondly, just so you're aware, as of the end of October, I had terminated the agreement with Alan relative to providing services to the county attorney's office. I had discussed that in early October into September, but went ahead and decided to take action before the election, which, you know, is where we're at today. So the bill you approved today for him would be the last one. Okay?
Good, thank you, Jim.
Actually, I do have one thing. I know some other counties have been chatting about trying to find like temperature readers for people that as they're coming and going from buildings. Those are pretty much impossible to get a hold of now.
Okay.
So if it's something where we start looking at some of those measures down the road, we're probably going to have a hard time sourcing.
I think that if it gets to that stage, I kind of take a cue from the auditor. We'll buy some one-time use pens and put them at the desks and pass them across and sanitize the documents when they come back or something, you know.
No, I just wanted to bring that up.
Okay.
If we do start looking down the road and making some other changes or whatever, that we might want to be, you know, trying to plan ahead. Sure. If all possible.
Okay. Thank you, Bill. Any other county employees wishing to share with the board this morning? Okay.
Yeah, Jeff, this is Eric.
Yeah.
Just gonna give you a little update. Do have a site meeting with Mike Nolan here at 11 on the sheriff's office within the last week. The majority of the sheetrock on the interior has been put up. They're going to be doing mudding, taping today. Did some hydro seeding around the building. So things are definitely going along there. The insulated steel panels are going up as we speak as well. So good progress there. And then I did want to announce that we are now the owners of 1995 Sweetland Road. We did close on Friday on that FEMA acquisition property on Sweetland Hill. So in about a year and a half, I know it's felt like a long process, but it's kind of typical of FEMA acquisition. So I'll be putting the finishing touches on developing an RFP for demolition of that structure. Unfortunately, we're moving into winter time. It's on a hillside. I'm probably gonna have some conversations with Keith on getting some advice on how we handle stabilizing that, since we will not be able to get vegetation established very quickly. So, but just wanted to let you know we did close on that on Friday.
Okay,
That's all I have.
thank you, Eric. It's good to hear we got that finally done.
Yes.
Okay, any other county employees wishing to share anything this morning? Hearing none, this is an opportunity for the public to make comments. Any members of the public out there wishing to make a comment on any item, please speak. Bill, do you have anybody indicating?
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, my name is Mike Klein. I was wanting to talk to somebody about the fireworks situation here in Muscatine.
Okay, Mike, could you give us your address and then we chat?
210 Pond Street, Muscatine, Iowa.
Okay. Go ahead. You have.
Okay, well, we're wanting to find out and get some backers to actually terminate the fireworks from in our neighborhoods, at least down here. And we've contacted the mayor. The mayor told us to contact the city. The city police chief told us that anyway. And Senator Laughlin said that he would help us in the backing of this from June 1st until July 14th. The fireworks here have never stopped. I don't know if that's when the tents finally first came here, but it just never stopped. And I don't know if you people know that around beginning of 4th of July and after 4th of July, the fireworks were so bad down here you could barely see. And it's not the actual sparklers and stuff, it's the mortar rounds that they've been using. We've had their sent pictures to Mayor Broderson of Roman candles on top of our roofs, in our car windows, all kinds of things like that. And it has never ceased in that whole time for that month there. And we were trying to find some way to change it, not to get rid of them, but to either put them back on the riverfront like they were, which was very nice. But in the neighborhoods, it was just insane. And there's all kinds of people. We have 248 call-ins from the police department. And if they had a fund of $250, they said that would be $62,000. And we're not going to run around and be police ourselves and stuff like that. The cops couldn't go to every place like this because they just didn't have the manpower or the time to do it. And we're just trying to find some kind of help to do something with this situation.
Okay, you probably, I don't know if you'd spoken with one of the supervisors, so yeah, if, Pond Street would be within the jurisdiction of the city of Muscatine, and clearly that, as you're probably well aware, that there was legislation enacted by the Iowa legislature. So Senator Lofgren and I would say Representative Cisneros, which would be your newly elected representative, would be the ones to start having those discussions. But it sounds like in your case there are people that are operating outside of the current legislation, and any further restriction, the city would have to do that, and the city police department would have to handle the enforcement. The county has no jurisdiction, or our sheriff's office does not have jurisdiction within the city of Muscatine. They can do certain things, but they can't enforce local ordinances. So I will actually reach out with the mayor and see what's happening, and we'll have a conversation with them about that as well.
Okay, my name's Peggy. I'm just like, so yeah, I guess we kind of got to run around because we talked to the mayor said talk to the police, we talked to the police. Then we got, called up Senator Lofgren, which we did that. So he gave us the number of Nathan Mather, and that's how we got to group meetings. So that's kind of how we got here.
Yeah, I would encourage you both that your city council will have a public comment section in their meeting as well, and I would make sure that your local council members are all aware of the issue and your feelings on it, because they are really the ones that would have to drive the police, any enforcement activities or any further restriction. And they certainly, that would be within the city's rights to further restrict fireworks in neighborhoods.
Okay. How do we go about getting involved in that meeting like we did this one?
The city of Muscatine has a website, and I apologize, I wouldn't have the link, but they should have a publication where they'll put their agenda out. And does anybody recall their meet on a Thursdays?
First, second, and third Thursdays, is it?
7 p.m.
Yeah, first, second, and third Thursdays, I believe at 7 p.m. Unfortunately, I think probably most of their meetings are virtual like ours are now. But there is a public comments section in that meeting as well, and you are welcome to do that and have the same conversation with them. And then you'll have all your elected representatives there.
We'll look on that website. Actually, the people look a little better than the checklist and stuff. Do you have anything else when you say, Mike? Okay, well, we'll look on the website and try to get
Thank you. While you're still a moment, Mike, if you want to reach out to your actual city council member for that district would be Nadine Brocker. And if you go on the city website, she should have a phone number that you can contact her at. And they actually have a Southend type meeting that they tend to try to get together on. I don't know, I'm sure it's virtual right now, but that would be a good avenue for you to reach out to combine yourself with maybe other individuals in that neighborhood that you may not be aware of that may be completely for what you're trying to request on. But I would reach out to the initial group would probably be Nadine and then maybe your at-large council members as well too.
Okay, we will look her up. Thank you. All right, thank you. We're gonna sign off.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, are there any other members of the public wishing to address the board on an issue this morning?
Nobody has unmuted themselves.
We see no one unmuting, and Bill indicate we don't hear anyone. So hearing nothing, the meeting is adjourned.